right now on the Dow. But I want to talk a little Donald Trump because he's politically incorrect as ever, and he's still climbing right now in the polls. He's narrowing the gap between himself and Hillary Clinton considerably, just a 5-point spread right now versus 16 points only a few weeks ago. And he's tops in the Republican field. His complete disregard for any semblance of political propriety is actually what voters really like here. But watch this. A reporter in New Hampshire tries to get him to modify his language on immigration, and hear the response.
Are you aware that the term anchor baby, that's an offensive term? People find that...
You mean it's not politically correct, and yet everybody uses it? So you know what? Give me a different term. Give me a different term. What else would you like to say?
The American-born child of an undocumented immigrant.
Oh, you want me to say that? Okay. I said, no, I'll use the word anchor baby. Excuse me. I'll use the word anchor baby.
There you have it. What you see is what you get. Joining me right now, Gary Smith, the president of Cadena Group, Ohio State Senator Capri Cafaro, former federal prosecutor Doug Burns, and our very own Charlie Gasparino, who Trump's been talking a little bit about as of late. You've been pretty critical of him all along.
He didn't shoot me down.
You,
and I don't get on his page for what is politically incorrect statement. Listen, I've known Donald, just a little bit of history here and a little bit of disclosure. I've known him for many years. I like Donald a lot. I think he's a great businessman. I am somewhat skeptical of his. Let's just say more than somewhat. I'm skeptical of his conversion to as a conservative, because I know he was much more of a Democrat, liberal Democrat for many years. And I don't like some of the language he says about John McCain and things like that. But so that's where I come out, and I think he's kind of a Hillary plant in a way, because because if he doesn't, I know why I know what he's doing here. He's building his brand, and he knows that if he can, and he goes after Jeb and all these Republicans so much, and he knows if Hillary goes in there, he can put his name on Yosemite Park. It's going to be a golf course.
Or that big wall in
It'll
Mexico,
be Trump
right?
Yosemite.
Although I think he did promise Maria this morning that he actually wouldn't put his name on that wall.
On the wall.
But let's talk a little bit about that wall. This idea that the 14th Amendment,
yes.
He's saying basically that it doesn't protect these quote-unquote anchor babies.
Let's describe what an anchor baby is.
Yeah, okay.
First of all, an anchor baby, everybody says it's a negative term. The reason they say that is because it's a term based on something that's not true. They make it sound like if you have the child, right, to illegal aliens, that's going to enable the parents to automatically and immediately have status here. That's not the case. You have to wait till the child's 21 years old. Okay, but the 14th Amendment says, and it's so funny the way everybody just selects part of it. If you are born here, you are a citizen. Case closed. That's it. Wrong.
Really?
It says if you are born here and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
So what does that mean? They're subject to the jurisdiction. Because that's something that people say,
There's bad news, though, for those who are making this argument. Sorry to interrupt you, Trish, which is that an illegal alien is, in fact, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. They can be charged with a crime in a court. So the point of the matter is, real quick, the law is very well settled that the offspring of 2 illegal aliens is a United States citizen. However, what the other side is arguing is that, A, that should be changed. That could be ostensibly in a statute, but more realistically in a constitutional full-blown amendment. And then, B, what they argue with some validity is that in 1868, when the 14th Amendment was put in after the Civil War, it had nothing to do with offspring of illegal aliens. It had to do with slaves who were then legalized.
Okay, so, regardless of whether this is going to work or not work from a legal perspective, it seems to be working, Gary, from a political perspective, in that he is tapping into something. There's some anger out there. People are frustrated. They're frustrated about the economy. They're frustrated about crime. And they don't like the idea that so many people are coming here illegally and getting all the benefits of this country.
Exactly, Trish. You hit the nail on the head. It will be debated for probably years whether Trump is elected president or not, the constitutionality of the 14th Amendment and how it applies to illegal immigrants. It doesn't matter to Donald Trump. He might be, and I was skeptical, as Charlie was, and maybe Charlie still is, as anyone of Trump. But he's turning out to be, he might be the greatest natural politician I've ever seen. He has an ear to say exactly what is going to drive up his poll numbers. He's brilliant.
But it's just being himself, right? I mean, Senator Cafaro, isn't that the whole idea here? People are sick of politicians that are telling them what they think they want to hear. This is a guy who just says exactly what he thinks. sometimes in not such an appropriate way.
Well, and as you heard in that previous clip that you played of Mr. Trump, he was like, well, I'm saying something that everybody else says, and I'm going to keep saying it. And I think that that is the kind of, I don't even want to call it rhetoric. He is who he is. I actually also know Mr. Trump. I don't necessarily agree with everything that he says, certainly, but I have a lot of respect for him as a person. He's a nice person, but he is what you see. And I think that there's a great thirst in the electorate, Democrats and Republicans alike, to just have somebody that's not scripted. And that's certainly that's where he's, I think, getting so much traction.
Here's what he's appealing to, I think, with this immigration question. And this appeal over, is starting to, it basically, the appeal overshadowed his disgusting rhetoric about, immigrants being rapists and whatever, murderers. The appeal is this: American people know that you can't, intuitively, you can't have a burgeoning welfare state and open borders. Right. They know that.
Right.
Average taxpayers know that. They see Democrats and even Republicans mealy-mouthing that issue. It makes no sense to have open borders and Obamacare and this and that and the other.
So finally, you get a guy who's willing to, call it what it is.
One guy said it, and this anchor baby thing is a great example. It just rubs people the wrong way that someone might get pregnant in Mexico, jump over a stream and give birth, and that person gets that newly minted American citizen.
We only have like 2 minutes left, so I want to jump in to talk a little more economy stuff here, because he made some interesting comments this morning with Maria Bartiromo in China. Obviously a big focus, and he had some thoughts on just exactly how he wants to deal with China. Listen to this.
But I've always been a conservative person, and my bent has been conservative. And over the last number of years, when I started getting very political, I started seeing more and more that that is my leaning, and that is my strong leaning. And I think people see that.
Okay, that's not exactly the one we wanted to play. A very interesting soundbite, nonetheless. But
what he basically said, I know what you were calling for because it caught my ear. He basically said that he's going to start a trade war with Japan and China.
Trade war, yeah.
Without saying the words trade war, but he talked about going toe-to-toe with them on tariffs and you name it.
Yeah, and he's got the guy to fix it all. Listen, we got the soundbite right now.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
One of the things I've done is, on trade pacts, I've spoken to Carl Icahn, who's a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, and others of the great deal makers and negotiators, and they're going to represent me if I win, and they're going to represent our country on trade deals. We're going to get the best dealers in the world, and we have them. I saw Charlie Gasparino on your show, and he understands when I mentioned Carl and I mentioned some of these other names. These are the people that we need negotiating for us, not diplomats and not people that have no business ability.
Hey, Charlie, he's turning into one of your fans. But he's making the point, and you and I know Carl very well. Carl actually said, I don't want to get up that early, but I'll tell you, I think...
Carl's like me, we like a few martinis at the end of the night.
But I think Carl might be coming around. They had dinner the other night. Donald Trump mentioned that. And there are a lot of people that sort of initially dismissed Donald Trump. You were one of them.
If he's going to be, I'm still skeptical. For Carl to be a trade representative, does he have to get congressional approval on that?
Yes. I'll tell you what.
I mean, he's going to be Treasury Secretary.
Is the Senate really going to confirm a corporate raider?
But Trish, working off your point,
I don't know.
Donald Trump is like Howard Cosell. He tells it like it is.
Yeah,
that's why the Heartland loves him.
No, that's why they love him.
Exactly why the Heartland loves him.
Why have other
trade stuff is
tried
big in
this
Ohio?
in the past?
That's a great question. That's a great
Senator
point.
Cafaro. Do you tell like it is, or is there a fear there?
Some may say that I certainly am a straight talker too. I've been called a fire plug by President Obama, whatever that may be. I don't know if that's good or that's bad.
Yeah.
But in my experience in my own little corner of the world, and probably the swing state of swing states. We see success in Governor Kasich because he, quote, tells it like it is as well. And
not
quite. I was going to say not quite.
I will say this. I will say this.
Well, I didn't say that. He's in a category. Mr. Trump is in a category of his own. That is for sure.
I think the law of averages. Just going to say this. Throw it out there. Is running against Donald. And here's what I mean by that. There have been candidates that allegedly shot from the hip all the time, and sooner or later they say something that gets their you-know-what caught in something. So,
Well,
But you know what? The difference I mean, he said a few things that could have gotten him thrown right out. And yet we've seen him continue to rally
because he is independent, and is able financially to stay in with or without a super PAC, with or without a backer. He has that longevity.
You know, he's going to have to. You know, here's another
and he's not a career politician, so he doesn't need to worry about a job.
I think that money stuff is an Achilles heel for him too. Because here's what I don't think Donald wants to spend $1 billion of his own money. I bet my little that he doesn't want to do it. Just know the way Donald is, because he.
Who
remember,
does? Who would?
Would want to?
Or he doesn't want to spend $500 million or $60 million, because Donald earned a lot of that money when he was in the tank. But here's the thing: think about it now. At some point, he's going to have to spend. If he runs as an independent, he's going to have to set up committees in all 50 states. Just cogitate this as you think about him being a very, very serious candidate.
He's going to have to spend a little.
And I don't think he will.
All right. We're going to have to earn a little. We got to take a break. Thanks so much, guys. Good to have you here, everyone.
Thanks.
All right, coming up, the reality of trusting our former enemies. The man who Donald Trump listens to the very most on military matters is going to be here, and he's telling us whether we are at risk right now with Iran. We're talking about that. Plus, Jan Morgan's going to be joining on just exactly what your rights are when it comes to gun laws. Lots coming up in the show as we watch a market that's continuing to accelerate in losses of 261 points. We've got full coverage right after this.